So for this video, we're going to just kind of make some changes to what we've been doing. Just some refactoring, where we just kind of go back into what we've done and just make some adjustments and kind of fine tune some things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my BP spaceship and my BP ring. Now, our BP spaceship is handling the process of getting the player controller, the thing that controls the score, and updating it, that makes sense. However, it doesn't really make sense for it to be the trigger for it. Because we can have different kinds of pickups, we could have different kinds of rings, or we can have traps or bombs that where we hit those, we want to maybe take away points or eventually later on take away health. And our logic has us handling the control of what we hit inside of the spaceship. Really though, we want our ring to control how it interacts with our spaceship and then tell the spaceship to add points or tell the player controller to do so. So we're going to move some logic around. In our BP ring, we already have our event actor begin overlap, cast to BP spaceship, destroy actor, where this lets us destroy our ring when we run into it. But we're actually casting to our BP spaceship here. And as a result, we could create a function in here inside of our BP spaceship to do this and move all that logic over into BP ring. So we are actually going to go ahead and do that. So to do that, it's actually pretty straightforward. In BP spaceship, let's grab these 3 nodes that are here. I'm going to click and drag to highlight all of them. Right click and then collapse to function. And then down here, we can name the function. Let's call this one add points. Now we have this function called add points. We can go ahead and just break this connection because we're not going to be calling that here. In fact, we can go ahead and just delete that. Instead, compile and save. I'll go to my BP ring, and here we have cast to BP spaceship. If we cast to it, so if our spaceship hits a ring, our ring checks to make sure it is a spaceship and then destroys itself. But before we do that, we can say as BP spaceship, we can do add points. And then make the connect execution pins here like this. So we add our points, then we destroy the ring. So we compile and save. And if that worked out, you can just press play. And if I run to this ring again, there we go. I moved the logic out of the spaceship and kept it and put it into the ring. We have a function here for adding points. We can double click and open and see and edit this. But we don't really need to do anything with it. We just wanted to pull that logic out to keep it straightforward. Now, with functions and other things, this added a new tab instead of a BP for add points. We can close that out. We don't really need to keep that open. And when we add in other kinds of pickups or traps or anything like that, we'll add in different kinds of functions to do different things. An added benefit of this is that we don't have to check what we're hitting. Our spaceship doesn't have to check to see, well, did I hit a ring? Did I hit a wall? Did I hit a bomb? Did I hit a coin or whatever? Because our ring is handling it, the ring, BP ring, knows what to do, which is to add points. So we take a check out of this. So we don't have to check for what we're hitting. We know we are already being hit by a spaceship. So we'll just do that there. Next thing I want to do is I want to modify our colliders. So BP ring viewport. Our collider, as we saw in an earlier video, is really just the shape of this ring. But it makes it so it's kind of hard to hit the ring, right? What if we're close but not quite on it? Or our spaceship, for that matter. Our spaceship has a collider that's the same exact shape and size as a spaceship, it's really common to actually create a kind of bubble or a ball collider around the shape that you can adjust where maybe the player is close enough that you want to count it. Doing that is actually pretty easy. With BP ring selected, we select the BP ring itself, not the ring mesh. We add, we search for a collider, COOL, and then we'll grab a sphere collider. And we'll call this sphere collider. Now that sphere collider is really small. Way too small for what we need to be. In fact, I actually need to make some modifications to this, where my ring mesh, I adjusted the size of it. I'm going to set this back to 0.1, 0.1, 0.1 for all axes. Because I do want the ring kind of small for my game. Yours can be different. But I can take my collider and I can adjust the sphere radius. So I take the sphere radius and I can make it bigger. So if I hit anywhere within this sphere, that'll count as a collision. So I'll set the sphere radius to, let's just say 500. And so now with my sphere collider selected, if I look at towards the bottom here, I have rendering. I have visible and then hidden in game. I'm going to uncheck hidden in game, compile and save. That makes it so that sphere will show up when I'm playing the game. And that made it a little bit easier to hit. I really want to test it. I'm going to make this sphere radius really big. Just temporarily to see. So it's a really big radius. So as soon as I go anywhere within that circle, it works. So now my collider has been adjusted. I'll set this back to 500. And as I'm playing and testing my game, I may decide I need to increase the radius of that to make it a little bit easier to hit. Now for my BP spaceship, I'm going to do the same thing. I'll select my BP spaceship. I'm going to add, and I'll do collider. And I'm going to go ahead and just use a box collision. That way I can set the size and shape to be roughly the same as my spaceship. This can get a little tricky to do, but we have the box extends option here. I can adjust the X, Y, and Z of this box. I want it to be pretty long, so I'm going to adjust it on the X. I want it to be most, but not all of this length of this ship. And I'm actually going to go ahead and, just for the sake of sizing this, I'm going to drag this up, get out, so we can see a little bit better. That's too long for what I want. You should adjust according to your spaceship. I'm going to make it a little bit wider as well, where it's just the main body. The wings, I don't really care too much about. I don't want to make it too hard. If I set it so that way it's all the way for the whole width of the thing, of the spaceship, that might be too hard because we end up with areas that don't have, hold on, let me show you. With a collider like that, I have areas that looks like they wouldn't be part of the collision that are. That doesn't really work. So I'm going to make this narrower. I'm going to make it a little bit shorter as well. And I'm going to move it so that way it is almost at the front of the spaceship. So really it's just the cockpit that is the, where the collision is going to be. Switch back my view and I'll bring this back down into the space for the cockpit. So now this collider, this collision, is what's going to be checked for if we hit something. So I'll compile and save. Let's play. There we go. I'll go back to my BP ring and I'm going to go ahead and turn back on hidden in game. That way the collider doesn't show up when I'm playing the game. It'll still show up in the preview. It might be a little hard to see in the video, but when I'm playing the game, it won't show up for us anymore. Now, lastly, I want to change the ground. So I have this plane that I set up earlier. It's really big, and the texture on it makes it look kind of funky. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that. And instead, I'm going to place in some geometry. So I'm going to go to the Add button. I'll do Place Actors Panel. Open that up. And I'm going to look at for the box that says Geometry. Then Box, Cone, Cylinder, Stairs. So I'm going to grab Box and drag that into my scene. I'm going to set the position to 0, 0, 0. Then bring it down, way down. And the reason why we're using this is because this is not actually a box. This is a geometry in the shape of a box that can be adjusted in its size any way we want to be. And then as a result, when we add a texture to it, it won't get stretched out. So if you take the brush settings and you go for the X, Y, and Z, I'll set the X to 50 or 5,000. I'll set the Y to 5,000. And I'll leave the Z I'll put it at 5. So it's really thin, but really wide and really long. And I can make it even bigger if I wanted to. We can also, if we wanted to, like cut out shapes from within this. But for now, just one big empty kind of space works. In fact, if you wanted to, you could construct a room to kind of work with, which maybe I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. But for now, that works. And so the perk of doing it this way is, again, the texture that the material that we add to our ground isn't going to be stretched anymore. So I'm going to look at the ground so I can see it. My content drawer. And I can create a new material if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and just use a starter content material. So just starter content materials, and I'm going to drag until I find one that looks kind of cool. And I'll go ahead and we'll see what water ocean looks like. If I can drag that in. I now have the ocean. My spaceship is now flying over the ocean. And there's some basic wave patterns that are happening, and looks pretty cool. Or maybe you want to work with a different kind of lake, of water. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Or maybe you like this tech hex tile. Yeah, this one has a glow. Though not so great for what I want to do. I'm going to set this back to a simple, for the sake of my game here. Also, it's just concrete tiles. I'll work with that. And then I'm going to go ahead and adjust the location for this so it's further up, so I see more of it in front of me than behind me. One thing I can always do here is I can actually adjust the size of this pretty easily. If I go in and select my ground, box brush, and I can scroll down to brush settings, and I can adjust the size here. And that will change the size of the geometry. And this is actually really economical in that it does not take as many resources to handle this than it would to take for one standard shape that you scaled out really big. Now, in the panel for surface properties inside of the details panel with the ground selected, we have this value for U and V. Now, these are different coordinates that are actually part of the XYZ format, where they have to do with the points of space on the object. It's used for texture mapping. We're not going to get into that here. But let's say these squares are too big, small for what I want it to be. I can go in here, adjust the scale, bring it to say 4, and click apply. And now that's stretched out the texture without stretching it, actually just made it map out a little bit differently. So the tiles look a little bit bigger. If you see that your ground looks really, really cluttered and weird, you can do that, which will adjust the size of the texture that's applied. While I'm at it, I'm going to select my ground and press F2 on my keyboard. And then that lets me rename this to be ground. All right, so now we have done some minor fixes where we adjusted our colliders. We've changed the ground, and we've made some changes for our logic for how some things get handled. So that's going to be it for this one. Thanks.